Lee Jong-fan, better known as Bruce Lee, was born on November 27, 1940 in the San Francisco, Chinatown, California, according to the Chinese dragon clock calendar. His father, Lee Ho, was an opera and Chinese singer, and his mother, a German Chinese, was Grace. When Lee was 3 months old, his parents returned to Hong Kong. He grew up in a family of 7. He was 172 centimeters tall and weighed 65 kilograms at the time of his death. Bruce first became acquainted with martial arts with his father and then went to martial arts school. Bruce was taught by Ip Man from the age of 13 to 18. One of Ip's senior students, Wang Xin Lung, began teaching Bruce Lee, and he is said to have had the greatest influence on Bruce Lee's kung fu. Bruce also learned Western boxing. He sailed to the United States at the age of 18 to escape criminals for just $100 and enrolled at Edison Technical School with the help of the restaurant manager he worked for. Then, at the suggestion of his advisor, he began to study philosophy. Bruce initially worked in a restaurant when he arrived in the United States to pay for his education, but because the restaurant's chef disagreed with him, he had to leave and start a newspaper, and he paid for the city and studied at night so that he could be accepted to University of Washington. Subscribe our YouTube channel to watch the rest of this video and more. Bruce began teaching martial arts in the United States in the 1960s. Bruce's first student was a judoka named Jess Glover, who later became his assistant. After a while, he was opposed by the Chinese living in the United States, who asked him to stop training foreigners. And to shut down his club, they sent a skilled fighter named Wang Jackman to fight Bruce Lee, in which Wang was severely defeated. Bruce Lee is well known as martial artist, but he also studied Asian and Western drama and philosophy during his lifetime, albeit at the University of Washington. He had a high level of study and had an extensive library of philosophical texts and, of course, martial arts subjects. He also wrote poetry in addition to martial arts and philosophy. Bruce Lee entered the cinema as a child through his father, a famous Canton opera star, and starred in several short black and white films as a child. He played his first role as a baby in a stroller. He starred in 12 films when he was 18 years old. Then a professional invited him to play a role in the series Green Bee. Bruce Lee, after starring in several series and movies, such as the Green Bee series, the Marlowe movie, the Longstreet TV series in the United States, decided to return to Hong Kong and work with his countrymen. His compatriots also starred in several films, which were well received by film companies. He starred in Monk Kotong and later in The Big Boss and First of Fairy, which broke the sales record of all Hong Kong films. After these films, everyone came to the conclusion that Bruce Lee is undoubtedly the best martial artist in the world. Bruce Lee then decided to make a film, and in 1972 he founded his own film company, Concord Film Company, and directed The Dragon's Way, or The Return of the Dragon. The film broke the sales record of Bruce's previous film in Hong Kong again. During this period, Bruce Lee faced a wave of offers from film companies and starred in his fourth famous film, The Game of Death, which remained unfinished due to the death of Bruce Lee. Bruce married a girl named Linda in 1964. His wife was a good support for him in life and work. Bruce Lee and Linda had a son, Brandon Lee, and a daughter, Shannon. His children also turned to acting, and his son died mysteriously while performing a scene from the movie The Crow. Bruce Lee contracted a vertebral disc herniation in the 1970s due to strenuous exercise. The doctor forbade him to continue exercising, but he controlled the pain caused by the local injection of cortisone. He suffered from a headache and then epilepsy 2 months before his death at the Golden Harvest Studios in Hong Kong. and doctors diagnosed him with an excessive accumulation of water in the intracellular or extracellular space in the brain, cerebral edema. On the day of Bruce Lee's death, the same symptoms are repeated. Bruce Lee was with Raymond Joe at 2 p.m. on July 20, 1973. The two talked until 4 p.m. and then went to the home of Taiwanese actress Betty Ting-chi, who played the lead role in Death. There, Bruce feels a headache and Betty gives him a strong aspirin pill. Bruce falls asleep at about 7 p.m. Bruce goes into coma, and doctors notice that his brain is swollen. His brain weighed from 1,400 to 1,575 grams. None of the blood vessels were closed or torn. All organs of the body were examined and autopsied. In his stomach was the same strong aspirin pill that Betty had given him. In addition, several cannabis seeds were found in his stomach, but it was not clear who gave him. Some doctors believed that the cannabis were poisoned and that it was the reason for his death, but his main doctor believed he had suffered brain swelling from taking strong aspirin. In the 2017 autopsy documentary, Rare's network forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Hunter scrutinized Bruce Lee's autopsy evidence to suggest that Bruce Lee was suffering from the effects of cortisone overdose to relieve pain caused by intervertebral disc herniation. He has been injecting it arbitrarily for 3 years, and there is evidence that Bruce Lee used the marijuana control plan to reduce work stress. Bruce Lee died on July 20, 1973 in Hong Kong, but was buried in the United States. His grave is located on the Garfield Street in Seattle, USA. At the time of his death, his son Brandon Lee was 8 years old, but he also died suspiciously 20 years after his father's death.